Good day to all. Welcome to Extreme Recap. In the Bay Area, Chris is trying to make it in 1981 by selling portable bone density scanners. He drops off Junior, his son, each morning at the daycare and as many hospitals as possible in the city to promote the scanners. Sadly, because they are unnecessary and expensive, they are pretty hard to sell. At the point when he takes the transport, he frequently catches an insane homeless person that calls the scanner a time machine. Chris sometimes needs to stay out longer to try to sell something. As a result, at those times, he asks Linda, his wife, to pick up their son. She frequently works double shifts to support the entire family, so this always irritates her. Chris discovers a Rubik's Cube, which Linda received as a gift from a friend, one evening while they are having dinner. She inquires as to whether he made good on the charges, yet Chris will record an augmentation, disappointing his better half considerably more. Chris plays with a cube that night and quickly solves it. The following morning, while Chris is on his sail walk every day, he sees a man emerge from a very expensive sports car. Chris inquires about his occupation. The individual responds that he is a stockbroker. Chris thinks that to get that job, people had to go to college. However, the man claims it is unnecessary. They just need to be good with numbers and able to show how happy the company's employees are. Chris believes that he also wants that life for himself. Chris informs Linda the following morning that he will be late at night because he will visit an office to apply for the position of stockbroker. Linda finds it absurd and mocks his impossible dream. Furthermore, thus, Chris tells her not to converse with him like that, setting off a contention that closes when Linda reminds, and they have 2 months of lease to pay. Some time later, Chris seeks employment by going to a brokerage firm. Every 6 months, this company hires 20 people, but only one of them wants to look decent. He pays a hippie girl who sings on the street some money to keep an eye on the scanner. Chris receives the application and begins to hear about the job specifics once inside. However, he suddenly sees the girl running away with the scanner application in her hand through the window. Chris immediately vanishes and begins to pursue her throughout the city and station, but the girl manages to board a train to get away. The following day Chris has promised Linda that he will sell the scanner to hide it from them. However, before leaving the completed application, he goes to the business. He personally delivers it to Jay, the manager of the resource department, so he can introduce himself and make a good impression. However, Jay is in a rush and vows to call later. Chris then observes the hippie girl and her partner using a scanner as they pass by. When it becomes clear that he has spent all of his savings on those scatters, he becomes furious and begins to pursue them. It is intended to be an innovative machine. However, he was unaware that hospitals and doctors would view them as unnecessary luxuries. After a lot of running, Chris is able to corner the couple in the bus and get the scanner back. To Chris, losing a scanner is like losing a month's worth of groceries. This indicates that upon his return home, he now has to sell the scanner he had instead of selling it. Despite the fact that it is Junior's birthday, Linda doesn't say anything because she finds this very disappointing. In order to keep him happy and buy him a basketball, the couple has given up some money. Linda, on the other hand, expresses her rage at Junior's lack of responsibility to Chris while Junior is distracted. After a month, Chris inquires about the situation with CJ. However, Jay is impatient. In order to take a taxi together, Chris pretends to be going in the same direction. Chris also tries to impress him once more by talking about his skills. Chris takes Jay's Rubik's Cube and finishes solving it, but Jay is concentrating on solving his own and keeps failing. Jay is extremely impressed when the taxi arrives at Jay's destination. However, he exits the taxi. Chris now has to pay. He clearly does not have any money. So Chris gets off the vehicle at a sign and takes off, making the cabbie pursue him. A frantic Chris runs into the train station and gets into a train. Be that as it may, the train horrendously entryway closes on his hand, making him drop his scanner in the station. Chris's entire schedule has been disrupted by this whole situation. Additionally, when he calls Linda to apologize because she missed her shift to pick up Junior, she is extremely enraged. And they required that sum of money. The last straw is here. As a result, she tells Junior that she is leaving and is devastated. To hear this, Chris makes a hasty retreat back to his house. Linda is already gone, along with her son and everything she owns. Chris gets a call from Jay at that time, and Jay tells Chris to write down the number of his secretary so that he can call him tomorrow to set up an interview. At the point when Chris can't track down a solitary pen, he gives his all to remember the number. Then he races to a store close by to get some paper and record the number on paper. Chris confronts Linda about what transpired when he goes to the daycare the following morning. Linda stated that she is no longer content. And despite Chris's acceptance of her departure, he will not permit her to take the youngster. The landlord finally gets tired of Chris owing rent and comes to ask him to vacate the property in the morning because painters are coming in. Chris promises that he will pay soon and that he can do the painting himself, so the landlord agrees to give him 1 more week. As a result, they agree to take turns living without Linda's income. After a few days, while Chris was painting the walls, 2 police officers arrived at his house and took him to the station, where he had to pay for all of his parking tickets. Sadly, the officer informs him that they will verify it at 9:30 in the morning. He must therefore spend the night behind bars. Chris attempts to elaborate. The following morning, he has an interview. Chris asks Linda to pick up Jay the following morning, but his one call is ignored. Chris is let go. However, he runs to the interview at the company in his unkempt attire because he is almost late. The interview panel is dissatisfied with the results. Chris thus explains the circumstance, and Jay confirms all of Jay's previous encounters. Chris had been in a legitimate suit. Chris is humorous. Jay comes to congratulate him after the interview, but Chris says he will have to think about it because he has learned that it is an internship with no salary and that the circumstances have changed. Witty and smart, he manages to make a very good impression. Jay urges him to proceed and guarantees he will fill his spot. Therefore, Jay promises to call him at night. Linda breaks some big news with Junior later that evening. She's going to New York because the boyfriend of her sister is opening a restaurant there, and she might get a job there. Chris declares he's keeping Junior since he realizes Linda can't deal with him. Motivated by her decision to do anything she desires, Chris likewise informs her regarding the entry-level position, which makes her much more bombshell and makes her leave after she's gone. Chris calls Jay and acknowledges the work. The following day, with the help of a friend, Chris and his son moved into a motel near them. Chris takes his son basketball because it's Saturday. Additionally, Junior claims to be a professional. Chris explains that the majority of people fail. Chris also reassures Junior when he becomes depressed by stating that no one, not even himself, should ever tell him that he cannot accomplish something. Later, they go to the hospital to sell the scanner. They finally get a sale, which gives them some money to keep them going for a few more days. The next morning, Chris learns about the industry on his first day of internship. Chris puts in a lot of effort and tries to show that he is the best candidate for the position, concealing his poverty at all times. Chris finds his boss during lunch break, Mr. Froth, in the city and starts a discussion, needing to lick a few boots to work on his possibilities. He interrupts himself, however, when he discovers that the crazy man possesses the scanner, still believing it to be a time machine. Chris immediately pursues him, chasing him down the street and through traffic only to be struck by a vehicle. Chris fails to focus on the person, yet in addition loses a shoe. As a result, while remaining cool, he returns to the office in that state. Chris keeps doing favors for the office manager in exchange for cash over the next few days and keeps calling clients to try to get in touch with them, but to no avail. To exacerbate the situation, Chris needs to leave ahead of schedule to get Junior, so he needs to finish a similar work as the others quicker than expected. Chris never uses the bathroom, drinks water, or hangs up the phone because of this. Because he owes the manager of the motel money, he avoids him and takes Junior along when he goes to hospitals on weekends to try to sell his last machines. Chris eventually makes the risky decision to complete the list out of order in order to speed up the process and secures an appointment with Mr. Ribbon, a senior manager of pension funds, who instructs him to visit his workplace within 20 minutes. Chris tries to leave the building quickly, but Furkish stops him and tells him to park his car somewhere else because he has no other option. Chris tries to park as quickly as he can, but by the time he gets to the meeting, the ribbon is gone. The next morning, Chris goes to Strip's house, imagining he incidentally turns out to be nearby. He apologizes once more and thanked Ribbon for the opportunity. He then makes up that he will take Junior to the football game. Ribbon informs him that he is also going with his child. Chris and Junior are therefore invited to accompany him to his private box. Throughout the game, Chris gives Ribbon a sales pitch, but no matter how much Ribbon says he likes Chris, he doesn't want to listen. Chris, on the other hand, receives the ribbon-adorned cards and more interested wealthy friends. Between his internship and the sales of the scanners, Chris makes every effort to survive for several weeks. The IRS, on the other hand, has finally arrived to rob Chris of the money in his bank account to pay his unpaid taxes, which have left him broke. Chris tries desperately to get the money he borrowed from an old friend, but the friend says he already paid him when he helped him move. Chris gets angry, yet his companion simply shuts the entryway on him. Sometime later, Chris took his child to the recreation area and held on to the insane man with the scanner. Again, Chris immediately pursues him and immediately retrieves his broken computer. Chris is cleaning it now and attempting to sell it to the doctor. Unfortunately, the machine does not function. When Chris and Junior got back to the motel, they found their belongings outside and noticed that the lock had been changed because they didn't have enough money. Chris takes Junior to the train station while they are waiting for the train, and since his friend still refuses to open his door, Chris tries unsuccessfully to open the window and pick the lock. Junior points out that, contrary to what the crazy man claimed, the scanner is not a time machine. Chris lets him know that it is and begins a game to encourage Chris, imagining they travel through time and can see the dinosaurs. Chris then declares, "Good cavemen require a cave." They then lock the door after sneaking into the station bathroom. Chris allows himself to cry the following day while Junior sleeps on a blanket made of toilet paper with the duo. Chris and Junior go to a homeless shelter, but because it only takes in women and children, they are turned away. However, they receive a tip about another. Because there are only a few spots and the line is long, they rush there as quickly as they can. A homeless person tries to sneak in to take the last spot when he gets to the entrance just in time, when there are only 4 spots left. But Chris immediately responds by fighting back. Chris gets the last room in the shelter when security discovers that the man cheated. Chris tries to fix the scanner with the limited light available and studies for the interview. He brings a few belongings with him whenever he goes to work and gives his coworkers an excuse as to why he is carrying bags around. Thanks to the cards he collected on the exam day, Chris is able to bring in some new customers to the business over the next few days. He is extremely nervous. However, on his way out, he still manages to finish the test fairly quickly. Chris runs into Frome, who is in a hurry and just got out of a taxi. He requested that Chris loan him $5 to pay for the cap. Chris cannot afford to waste that, but does it not still make a bad impression? Chris is unable to reach the shelter in time as a result of this delay. Therefore, Junior and he end up sleeping on a train. Chris gives blood the following day in exchange for money and uses it to recommend a scanner spare part. Today, they do make it in time to the shelter. Finally, Chris gets his machine fixed in bed. Junior contemplates whether his mom left as a result of him. Chris also makes it a point to reassure him and persuade him that it wasn't like that. The following day they were successful in selling the scanner and improving Junior's mood. Chris gets them a night at a lodging that end of the week. On Chris's last day as an intern, they spend it on the beach together to bond and take a break. Jay congratulates Chris for bringing in so many clients and says he did a great job. Chris is later summoned to Froms's office. When he is informed that he has been offered the permanent position that he so desperately desired, he is already preparing for tomorrow and closing the deal. Froth gives Fresh back the $5 as Chris leaves the structure. He cries and makes sense of this as the piece of his life called satisfaction. Christmas then comes to pick up his son and gives him a big hug. Prepared to begin their new life. The real Chris eventually started his own multi-million-dollar brokerage firm and sold his minority stake in the company to make millions. In addition, he has written a book that covers his entire life with great success. Turn on notifications, please subscribe for more videos like this, and like the channel to support it. Thank you very much for watching.